Hi, and welcome to Power Play. I'm Michael Couture. Tonight, one seat closer to a majority.
There are others like Mr. Ma who I know share the kind of view that I just described.
The Prime Minister picked up another Conservative MP with Markham's Michael Ma crossing the floor. We'll break down the Tory response and dig into the Liberal strategy with Caucus Chair James Maloney. Then, we weigh the new parliamentary math. Pollster Nick Nanos lays out the potential political consequence of Carney pulling another one of Poilievre's MPs. Plus, our front bench will dig into the caucus drama and a legislatively light session on Parliament Hill. First, though,
all of my colleagues here have the same experience of speaking to Conservative members, unfortunately a group which is in the minority in their group, who are extremely frustrated with the leadership of their party. They realize, like we do, that we're at a turning point. They realize, like we do, that we're in a trade war and that serious solutions are required. And they are required every day to go through this charade of obstruction, and you see it, repeating the same question 40 times in the House of Commons every day. That is a soul-destroying experience for many Conservative members of Parliament.
it might be going a little far to say that Steve McKinnon was gloating today, but the government House leader did take a bit of a victory lap as another Conservative MP crossed the floor to join the Liberal caucus.
So let's give a warm welcome to our newest member of the Liberal Party, Michael Ma.
All I want to say is Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and a great 2026 coming to all of you.
So the member of Parliament from Markham Unionville joined the Prime Minister, Mark Carney, on stage last night at the Liberal holiday party here in Ottawa. Michael Ma made it official through the Liberal Party 23 hours ago. He said that defection, now we should say that defection gives the Liberals 171 seats in the House of Commons, just one short of having a majority government. For more on the news and the impact of it, we're joined by Liberal National Caucus Chair and Ontario MP, James Maloney. Welcome back to Power Play.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me again.
Now, Government House Leader Steve McKinnon did repeat today that he is hearing there's a group of Conservatives who are frustrated with their leadership of their party. What have you been hearing from across the aisle?
I think Steve's right. I mean, look, you don't even need to hear it. You can see it when you're sitting in the House of Commons. I mean, this Mr. Poilievre's style of leadership is it's grown tired, and he's got his own members in his own caucus who are visibly frustrated and don't like the path he's got them on, the tone he's using, and the direction he's taking them. Because as Mr. McKinnon said, if you watch Question Period every day, it's the same sort of rhyming rhetoric over and over and over again. It's unproductive, it's unconstructive, and it's demoralizing. If I had to do that, I would be, frustrated and embarrassed, frankly. And so I just think we're at a critical point in time right now with the trade war and things that are going on. It's not a time for political theater and political antics. It's a time to be constructive and get things done. And I think you combine those two things, and that's what's causing these changes.
So are you expecting more to cross the floor to the Liberals then?
Look, I don't know. I get asked that question several times a day. It's in some cases.
Well, I'm sure you talk to Conservatives across the aisle. I mean, you say that they're making faces, and I'm sure that you're picking up on that. And as caucus chair, you must be having conversations. I
talk to them. I have a lot. Let me be clear about this. I have a lot of really good friends in the Conservative caucus, and I have for a long time. And I that's important for your viewers to know, because they're not. That floor in the House of Commons isn't a divide in a way that they think it is. Members of Parliament get along quite well. So I have conversations on a regular basis with Conservative MPs who are my friends. I'm not out there putting pressure on anybody. I'm talking to them about the issues that we're all facing, and talk to them about the tone of their leader, and how things are going. Have I had any direct conversations? I'm not out there actively recruiting personally. I'm about bigger picture things.
But are you hearing that discomfort and maybe them wanting to dip their toe into the pool, I guess is what I'm asking.
Yes, sure. I'm hearing the discomfort every day because it's like I said earlier. There's that level of frustration. I mean, look, these people get elected because they want to be productive. They want to do something. Yeah, they want to be in power. But crossing the floor, you have to think about this too. I mean, it's a major step to make, and that's you have to think long and hard before you make that move. So are others thinking about it? I believe there are. I believe, and it flows directly from the frustration they're feeling on their side with the style of leadership, as I said. But they see themselves reflected in the style of leadership and the concrete steps that Prime Minister Carney is taking, because we've made some pretty bold moves in terms of a whole variety of things, and they want to be part of that, those positive steps, rather than rhyming off rhetoric to criticize it. So yeah, there are people who are thinking about it, I'm sure, and let's see what the future holds.
I want to ask you specifically about that with regards to Mr. Ma, because in a speech on the Budget Implementation Act, he did say, quote, "The Liberals do not believe in a productive economy that works for hardworking Canadians." And on October 27th, he said, "When will the Liberals realize that their inflationary deficits are driving up the cost of food and driving Canadians to food banks?" He voted with the Conservatives consistently this year, even on Thursday, just hours before he crossed the floor. How can you be confident that he's actually a Liberal?
Look, I think if you were to ask that question to me, but change the name to any other Conservative member of Parliament, and their speech would have been virtually identical. All you have to do is watch these guys in question period when they're giving speeches on the budget or anything else. It's all the same stuff. It's all scripted. This is my point. But it's all, you're not allowed to talk unless what you're going to say has been vetted. I mean, it's so choreographed. It's like, I don't need to go in and listen to the speeches anymore. You only need to listen to one. So back to your question about Mr. Ma, presumably as a member of Parliament, like everybody, he wants to participate and engage. So what he said, I don't think is reflective of what he thinks right now. Whether or not, whether he's a Liberal right now, I think the answer to that is the definitive. If you're going to make a step like this, if you're going to make this level of commitment, think about what you're doing. You're changing your stripes. You're walking across the floor to serve with people who your colleagues don't want to work with. There's no going back from that. So this is a firm commitment. This isn't something you decide over lunchtime. This is a decision you make after considerable thought and careful analysis. And that's why I think you can be absolutely certain. And look, I don't know Mr. Moff personally, to be honest with you. I've only met him a handful of times. I'm looking forward to getting to know him better. But I know in the case of Chris Outremont, I mean, these decisions are not taken lightly, and it's because it has an impact on you, it has an impact on your family, but it has an impact on the country as well. And that's so anybody. I know Mr. Poilievre came out and said, "Geez, you can't trust this guy." Well, look at the source of the accusation. I don't think there's any reason to suspect at all.
I want to take a step back on this because there could be another floor crosser, and if there is, it would give your government a majority. Do you think it's right for a party to be handed a minority mandate by voters, but then get a majority through defections?
Well, look, the process allows for it. So, we were very close to a majority on April 28th. We're closer now. All of these individuals we're talking about ran in ridings when they know their ridings. I know my riding better than anybody else does. So their actions reflect their beliefs. Their actions reflect what they believe their constituents' beliefs are. I understand people can question the process, but like I said, this is done after long and thoughtful consideration. And I think if you look at the views of Canadians right now and where our priorities are, people are going to be enthused about this, because this is not a time for cynical politics or theater. It's a time to move forward. We're dealing with one of the biggest, most critical circumstances we have in my lifetime. And I think people will respect the fact that we've got now have a government that can move forward constructively without having to deal with these types of things.
But I guess what I'm asking is, do you owe it to Canadians to have another general election so they can truly have their say on how Parliament should look? Because if you do get a majority, it looks very different than what you were sent to Ottawa with in April. Even though it's 3 seats different, that is a major difference in how you will govern. So do you think there should be another general election if your party gets a majority through more defections?
No. Short answer is no. Look, it will not change our approach to governing. If you look at the way Prime Minister Carney has led, if you look at the way our government has conducted itself, look at going into the budget. You heard, Minister McKinnon, who's the House leader, talk for days and weeks leading up to the critical budget vote about how we didn't have a deal with anybody. We were moving forward on a path that we thought is the most appropriate for Canadians, regardless of the fact that at the time we were 3 seats short of a majority. So I do not think that approach will change if we have another floor crosser tomorrow or another one the day after that. We're governing in a way which Canadians elected us to do, regardless of whether that number is 169 or 179. So I don't think it'll change a thing.
But with respect, they elected a minority parliament and a minority government, and I don't think that is the same as a majority government and a majority parliament.
Well, you're right, it's not the same. But they elected a government clearly with a mandate to deal with the circumstances we're facing. And I think Canadians, look, you're going back to the individual riding analysis. Mr. Ma knows his riding better than you and I do. Mr. Outremont knows his riding better than you and I do. They're making decisions in the best interest of their constituents. But as a government, we are not going to change our approach. And I think Canadians will be quite pleased about that because they obviously believe that we're on the right path. I mean, they made that decision in April. I think that, talking to people now, those views hold. When I'm talking to people in the public and my neighbors, or when I'm in other ridings, people are saying, keep it up, you're on the right path, you're doing the right thing, this is what we need at this time. So no, I don't think people will be look, you're going to hear those noises from the opposition benches, the Conservatives, for sure. But you're not going to hear them from the general public who wants the government to work hard. Canadians don't want another election. Canadians don't want another election at all. That I think if you were to take a poll right now, you'd be a pretty high number. But I think people are more interested, especially now going into the holidays and dealing, we have the free trade agreement with the United States coming up for review this coming year. People don't want an election. They want us to bear down and get to work.
Okay, unfortunately, that's all the time we have, but we do appreciate you coming on. James Maloney, Liberal National Caucus Chair, thanks so much.
Anytime, always glad to come and talk to you.
Now, we did ask the Conservatives to come on to our show today to respond to the floor crossing. However, we were told that no member of their caucus was available. There has been plenty of reaction online, though. It started with leader Pierre Poilievre, who posted in part on social media. Michael Ma was elected as a Conservative by the constituents of Markham Unionville to fight against Liberal inflationary spending, driving up the cost of living in his community. The post goes on to say he chose to endorse the very policies he was elected to oppose. The people that he let down the most are the ones who elected him to fight for an affordable future. He will have to answer to them. There were other members of the Conservative caucus who also took to social media. BC MP Todd Doherty sharing videos and a picture from Wednesday's Conservative Christmas party, writing, "Odd. He seemed to be fine as he posed for pictures and danced the night away at the Conservative Christmas party last night." There is even a picture of Ma posing for a photo with Pierre Poilievre. There's another one, Conservative MP Kurt Holman, who wrote, "I was Michael Ma's secret Santa. I gave him an Amazon Fire Stick just hours before he crossed the floor. Now, I want my gift back, just like the people of Markham Unionville want their votes back." If you think those are hot takes, just wait until our front bench gets here. They'll break down the crossing and what it now means for Carney's path to a majority government. Today, we've got Sabrina Grover, Larissa Waller, and Carl Belanger. First, though, we'll crunch the numbers with Nick Nanos. How will the floor crossing change the calculation for the Conservatives? What about Mark Carney? The founder and chief data scientist at Nanos Research joins us right after this.
All I want to say is Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and a great 2026 coming to all of you.
Chris and Michael, I mean, look at this crowd. Your family. We're all over for Christmas. You are going to have a much better time spending Christmas with us than Christmas with the Cranks.
Well, it is the gift that keeps on giving for Prime Minister Mark Carney. He celebrated a little early yesterday after picking up another Conservative MP. Michael Ma represents a GTA riding, and he announced last night that he is crossing over to the Liberals. Now, Ma's move changes the math significantly in the House of Commons. It brings Carney one step closer to that majority government, and that comes 1 month before Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre faces a party leadership vote review. Joining us now to look at how this could impact public opinion is CTV's pollster of record, Nick Nanos. He's also the founder and chief data scientist of Nanos Research and newly invested member
Yes.
of the Order of Canada. Congratulations on that, by the way.
Thanks, Mike.
Your last poll, when he was looking at party support, had them at about a dead heat, 39-38. How do you think this floor crosser moves those numbers, if at all?
Well, you know, the thing is something like this is not good for Pierre Poilievre. It helps Mark Carney. And, you know, I think for the Conservatives, Michael, remember like Monty Python, the Black Knight? You know, he gets his arm cut off and there's blood spurting out.
Just a flesh wound.
It's just a flesh wound. This is kind of turning into that. You know, like one could be a coincidence. Two might mean that there's something there. Pierre Poilievre better hope that there's not more defections on his end, because that doesn't help his personal leadership, and that won't help him and the narrative that he probably wants to have going into his January leadership review, that he's the best choice, because obviously there are some, why don't we just say at least two, former colleagues who not only left but went to the Liberals.
Yeah. Like a big statement as well. So, you know, the fact that that is going to shift things, and you talked about what if there's another one, you know, that could give this government a majority without an election. How do you think Canadians would feel about that? Because what they decided in April was a minority government, and that's what they sent to Ottawa. How would that affect how Canadians feel if they get a majority by defection only?
I think if you happen to be a supporter of the Conservatives, there's probably blue steam coming out of your ears, thinking that you know, Canadians didn't vote for a majority government and now the Liberals have one. But the other thing that we have to take into consideration is that the Liberals are ruling as if they have a majority. The other thing is they're dealing with Donald Trump. Having a little more stability in the House of Commons, some could argue, is probably better for Canada. And maybe having a really weak or fragile majority government might be the best of both worlds. And that said, you know what? We poll Canadians and ask them if they want an election. The usual default answer is no, unless necessary.
Right. How does it affect the preferred prime minister numbers? Because that is something that you've been polling on, and we've seen Mark Carney really stretch out his lead over Pierre Poilievre. Do you think that this boosts it even more?
Well, it's not going to hurt Mark Carney for sure. You know, the thing is when we look at the preferred prime minister numbers, you can see that, you know, Mark Carney has upwards of a 20 to 22 point advantage over Pierre Poilievre. That's a massive advantage. Like maybe one way to look at this is like a personality deficit for Pierre Poilievre. And, you know, for Pierre Poilievre, good news for him is closing the gap with Mark Carney as a prime minister in waiting. Bad news is to continue to trail. And, you know, the thing is from day one, Mike, Pierre Poilievre has trailed Mark Carney since the last election, coming out of the last election, when it comes to the preferred prime minister numbers and leadership.
So do you think that this does, you mentioned it earlier, have that impact? Or do you think we need one more sort of, one more limb for the Black Knight going into January's leadership review? Because this is Conservatives, even though there are some numbers out there that show that dyed-in-the-wool Conservatives still do support him. How do you think that this affects him going there?
Well, I think going into the leadership review vote in January, I think for those folks, the vast majority are on board with Pierre Poilievre. And, you know, there's no alternative. Like, people can gripe about Pierre Poilievre. But the fact of the matter is there doesn't seem to be, are we going to call it the blue knight now since we're on the knight motif? There's no blue knight out there to replace Pierre Poilievre. And in my experience, for a leader to go into a leadership review and to be in trouble, there has to be some credible alternative. There's no alternative today, and I think he's probably going to do fine. The big question is how big will his majority support in that leadership vote be? And I think the big question is are there more people in caucus who are unsure about Pierre Poilievre?
Last question for you. I know in your polling, it really is still that sort of dead heat race. Talk to me about how fragmented the political spectrum is in this country when you consider the fact that since the year 2000, 2/3 of federal elections have ended in a minority government. I mean, that really kind of shows where people are at, doesn't it?
Oh, it's one step up from that, Mike. You know, it's not just the politics is fragmented. Our country geographically is fragmented. You know, the thing is once you go west of Ontario, if you're there, that's all people are thinking about is getting rid of the Liberals and the Conservatives getting into power. And I'm sure they don't understand out west how anybody is voting for the Liberal Party. And then you look at a province like Ontario and Quebec, and you know they haven't been embracing the Conservatives as much. So we have to think of division not just in terms of polarization, but also in terms of regions of the country.
Okay, we're going to leave it there. He is Nick Nanos, the founder and chief data scientist at Nanos Research. Thanks again.
Okay.
On the other side of a quick break, we're going to head back to our top story and get the front bench on the floor crossing. So what does this mean for the Liberals? But more importantly, what about the Conservatives? Sabrina Grover, Larissa Waller, and Carl Boulanger are standing by, ready to break it all down.
Mr. Ma is a seasoned executive, has incredible private sector experience, is a distinguished Canadian. I know he'll be very welcome in our caucus. I can only tell you that what I said earlier is that he shares the view that I just described of many, many Conservatives in that caucus who have to go home and talk to their chambers of commerce and talk to some of their supporters and talk to people who like what this government's doing, who like our focus on the economy, who like our ability and our desire to get big things done.
Liberal House Leader Steve McKinnon lauding his newest caucus colleague, Michael Ma. The Markham Unionville MP crossed the floor from the Conservatives to the Liberals last night. Now, in a statement, Ma said he'd concluded that Prime Minister Mark Carney is offering the steady, practical approach we need to deliver on the promises I hear every day while door knocking. End quote. Ma is the second Conservative to cross the floor since the last election. Chris D'Entremont made the move the day after the federal budget. It now all means that the Liberals are just one seat away from a majority in the House of Commons. There's an extra wrinkle for the Conservatives, though. It all comes just a little more than a month before Pierre Poilievre faces a leadership review. So how will this affect that? Let's ask the front bench. Joining us from Toronto is Larissa Waller. She's the founder of Henley Strategies and former head of communications for Ontario's Conservative Premier Doug Ford. Joining us in studio, Sabrina Grover was a federal Liberal candidate at the 2021 election. She is now a senior advisor at North Star Public Affairs, and next to her is former interim NDP National Director Carl Boulanger. He is now the president of Traction Strategies. Sabrina, welcome to Ottawa. You were here last night when it all went down at the Liberal Party holiday party. How did that go over?
171, 171.
We heard the chants. We heard the chants.
What a Merry Christmas, I think it was. I think that the move makes it a lot easier for other Conservatives in that caucus that are thinking about what does their future look like? How does Pierre Poilievre play into a future election? I think it makes their decisions a lot easier. And I think for the Liberals, it strengthens Mark Carney's message that it's not just Liberals in Canada that want to see what he's putting out. It's not just Liberals that are asking for the policies and the major projects and the issues that Mark Carney's presenting. seems to be Conservatives too. And I think that that's what's most important for him going forward, and for him especially going into a holiday period where last year we were 20 points in the polls and we had a very raucous year ahead of us. We are now in a much strengthened position, and I think that that's a positive for Mark Carney.
It was a much different holiday party last year, I'm pretty sure.
It probably wasn't a party.
Quick self-correction here. It was on Budget Day that Chris d'Entremont announced that he was crossing the floor. I just remember it differently because he was there the day after for it. And of course, you know, it all becomes a blur. Larissa, obviously a lot of anger from the Conservatives, especially the ones who partied with him the previous night. Even one of them wanting his Secret Santa gift back.
It's an Amazon Fire Stick that he wants returned. Yeah, you know what? There's a lot of questions. I think, you know, the gut reaction of Canadians who you explain this to, who maybe aren't as familiar with the parliamentary system, is, wait, can they do that? And the answer is, yeah, they can, right? And this happens, and every time this happens for the party that it happens to, it really sucks. It really sucks extra for Conservatives because the Liberals' minority is so thin. And I think your questioning of MP Maloney earlier was fair to ask. It's not so much, can you do this, right? It's, should you do this? You were elected with a minority government. That's what Canadians sent to Ottawa. That says, we like you, but we're just not quite sure. If you gain power, if you gain that majority by means of defections, should you do that? We know you can. We know that that's how our system works. But should you is a very fair question. You know, his credibility, he's been a Conservative for a really, really long time. For him to turn his back on all of that, that's a very interesting choice. It's a very interesting choice to do it the day after the Christmas party. Don't let yourself get caught on camera dancing and in pictures with Pierre Poilievre. Don't do all that. Have a little bit of humility and integrity. And I think when we talk about floor crossers like this, the Liberals are inheriting somebody that if I was them, I wouldn't trust.
Yeah, talk about that, Carl, because I did ask James Maloney about it. I mean, there's a long list. I have the list of times that he spoke against the Liberal government. Maloney basically said, look, those are kind of talking points they're given. And just a quick sub note, when at Christmas parties, always make sure that I don't get caught dancing on camera. That, I think, is a good rule of thumb for everybody who watches Power Play. That's our gift to you this Christmas season. Sorry, Carl. But about I almost lost my train of thought here. So about the whether or not they should be doing this. I mean, you know, how should people in his riding feel now about this? Because some of them may have elected him as a Conservative.
Well, some of them did, and now they have a Liberal MP. So, you know, but the reality is that there will be Liberal voters who will be happy because they have an incumbent now and they will be able to vote for him next time in a seat that used to be held by Liberals. So, you know, the truth of the matter is that Michael Maw is the Grinch that stole Pierre Poilievre's Christmas. Pierre Poilievre, it's a huge blow for him, a month away from his leadership review. And the MP for Markham, Whoville, I think it is, you know, he was caught dancing and eating and dining and for free, didn't pay for his ticket and all that. Then he goes to the Liberal Party. I assume he didn't pay for his ticket there either. It's probably a Christmas gift from Mark Carney. But, you know, I hear that the Bloc Québécois is holding their own Christmas party tonight. So who knows if Michael will show up there? Who knows?
Not sure how Mr. Maw's French is, but okay. You know, all of the Whoville stuff, I love it, Carl. Not that it throws me, but so then what should Canadians think of this, Sabrina? Because, yeah, he can do it. Should they do it? Because this is one of those unprecedented things where we've never really had a parliament that has come back so thin, 169, and so close to a majority. And if he gets it by defection, is that, I mean, I know the Liberals will take it as a win, but is it a win they should be taking?
I think it's more important to think about what are Canadians most concerned with today. Is it the 169, 171 race in Parliament, or is it affordability? Is it the threats that Donald Trump presents with the U.S. tariffs? Whether that's
but it's a parliament they didn't elect. That's not what they sent to Ottawa.
I agree. It's not what they sent to Ottawa. But what are they looking for now that government's in session? Right. I think they're looking for stability. I think they're looking for answers to the problems that they're seeing in their communities. So whether this is a 169 minority parliament or a 171 minority parliament, doesn't matter to a parent who has 2 kids and has to go to hockey and has to also feed their kids and get Christmas gifts. They want to make sure that the government is delivering on their promises, and both through the budget and through the work that this government continues to do, that's what they're doing. And I think if you look at the last year where we had such a divisive, toxic, kind of nasty parliament for so long, where no work got done. Almost 6 months of last year, almost nothing got done, nothing got passed. We didn't even see a budget for almost a year. I think that Canadians...
I mean, some would say that's the Liberals' fault, but okay.
Some, maybe. But I think that, that's not... Canadians want stability, and they want answers to the problems that they're seeing in their communities, and I think that they want a government to deliver that, and this government is going to continue to do that.
Larissa, let's flash forward about a month or so. What does Pierre Poilievre have to do between now and that leadership review to make sure that this isn't a bigger problem? And do you think if there is one more defection that seriously changes the calculation for Conservatives?
I don't think so. I think Conservatives are actually, I think this unites us a little more because it is so egregious and such a slap in the face to team unity. And Conservatives are very good at banding together when it's rough. And Pierre Poilievre's leadership review will be fine. He will be okay. It's a delegated leadership review. He's going to be okay. But to Sabrina's point about what Canadians are worried about, Mark Carney hasn't delivered on any of that. Mark Carney actually hasn't made life easier. Mark Carney hasn't gotten a deal with Donald Trump. Mark Carney promised pipelines but won't repeal the oil tanker ban off the northern coast of BC, and even gave a veto to the premier of BC when he didn't need to. And that oil can't go anywhere. So at least with MP Ma, he presumably has one more pro-pipeline MP, unless he changes his mind on that too. But to Sabrina's point, I totally disagree that Mark Carney is fulfilling his promise. I think he's getting further and further away from the things he promised Canadians.
Carl, talk to me a little bit about Poilievre and how much of a razor's edge he is on right now in terms of his support.
If another MP defects to the Liberals, the Conservative members have a free rein, because now you have a majority, which means an election is not around the corner. You have time to have a leadership race, elect a new leader, and change things. So it would be, in a way, a problem for Pierre Poilievre. It would allow a freer vote from people who are concerned that if you change leader now, you could go into an early election and not be ready. A majority from the Liberals, however they get it, will allow the Conservatives to rebuild if they choose to do so.
Even if it's that razor thin, because we know that the numbers are so tight, they're going to have to make sure they have everybody there. They've tried, we know that with the first budget motion that they had to pass, and the who's behind the curtain, who's not behind the curtain, and how close that was.
Well,
I mean, even with that thin majority, there's still that nervousness.
Of course, but you have that nervousness now. If you have a majority, suddenly some people will be, a little freer to express themselves about Pierre Poilievre's leadership. So it would be somehow a problem. And I think the fact that he would have lost 3 plus the one that's about to leave in the spring sometime,
right?
That's not even a year out of the election. It's a very short time for a guy who was 25 points ahead going into the holidays last year. That's the problem for Pierre Poilievre.
Last 20 to you on that, Sabrina.
Yeah, I think, the silent killer of any leadership is caucus mismanagement. And I think that once you start to see the wheels fall off that bus, people feel more and more free to see what else is around. And is Pierre Poilievre the guy that's going to win this Conservative caucus the next election? He wasn't at this time, and I don't think he's going to be at the next time. And I think that is going to become more pervasive to caucus members.
And if caucus management is anything that the Liberals know, it's a bit of the ghost of Christmas past. We're going to take a quick commercial break. When we return, MPs are heading home after a light legislative sitting. So what can we look forward to? Plus, we're going to hear from interim NDP leader Don Davies. That's coming up right after this.
What I really want to talk about is I think how effective New Democrats have been in this Parliament. If you think back to April, there was a question about, would we be relevant? Would we have a voice as Parliament? And I think that we've demonstrated that we've been very relevant and have had a strong voice and had an impact in many ways. What we pledged foundationally back in May was that we were going to dedicate ourselves to bringing the voice of working people to this Parliament. And I think we're the only party that has done that reliably and consistently every day. But if you want to look at some concrete examples, I would say that, you know, the Liberals made the school nutrition program permanent. That was originally a New Democrat idea.
That was interim NDP leader Don Davies in a year-end review that's airing this Sunday on CTV's Question Period. Now, he defended the relevance of his party after the Prime Minister proved that he could manage his minority government without working with the NDP's 7-member caucus. So both the House and the Senate have now risen for the year, meaning that there are no more bills that are moving along until late January when MPs do come back to Ottawa. If you are scoring at home, just 2 House bills actually made it all the way to royal assent in this fall setting. So what's going to matter for the new year? Well, let's bring back our front bench. Sabrina Grover, Larissa Waller, and Carl Belanger. Larissa, I want to start with you on this one. How much pressure do you think is on this government, especially when you consider that Mark Carney got elected on saying that they were going to move at speeds never seen before? And, you know, I think everybody has to admit that this fall sitting was kind of glacial in how it moved.
Yeah, and I will preface this for the viewers at home that we are talking about the most inside Ottawa thing possible, because nobody at home is really following legislation. They see if shovels
But we're
get in
helping
the ground.
them. Larissa, we're helping them by talking about it, right? Aren't we? You're doing a public service for us.
Yeah, no, you know what? But they don't know, right? They don't care, and they don't know. They care if there's shovels in the ground. They care if you promise a pipeline, it gets built. They care if you promise bail reform, bad guys stay in jail. They care if you promise to get a deal with Donald Trump, you get a deal with Donald Trump. They care if the jobs at Algoma Steel disappear. That's what they care about. Right? So if you're not passing a lot of legislation, if the committees are stalling, but you're actually doing stuff, I think that Canadians are going to give you a little bit of a fair shake there, but they're not doing anything. They're not getting the deals they promised. They are not passing the reforms they promised. They're half pregnant on pipelines, where we're going to build a pipeline, but you actually can't put it on a boat and get it anywhere. So this is the problem I think that the Liberals are facing. It's not so much a legislative agenda that is slow and glacial, because nobody honest to God cares, but they do care that they're not seeing any results. Groceries are still expensive, homes aren't getting built, pipelines aren't getting built, bad guys are still on the street, and that's how Canadians are feeling right now.
Sabrina, how important is it to tackle some of those things that Larissa said there so that Canadians are feeling it? Because to her point, I mean, a lot of people sit at home and say, it doesn't matter if we don't have a deal with the U.S., but because what does the deal change except for whether or not things are more expensive for me? How eggs are costing at the grocery store? How much of a leash does Mark Carney have in the so-called honeymoon before things really start to come back on him?
Well, what I think is really interesting about how Mark Carney has approached this government is it's not a continuation of the Liberal government under Justin Trudeau. It is a new government with new mandates, new procedures, and new things that he wanted to set up. And I think he has accomplished a lot, right? He said he was going to set up a major projects office. He did. He said he was going to set up Build Canada Homes. He did. He's gone out and done numerous new trade deals or new trade negotiations and built those relationships that we didn't have under the previous government. But to
Larissa's point, in fairness, those are like beginning stages. Those aren't things that are happening.
Yeah, but I think he has only been there since April. Like, it's not like he's been there for so long that we can say, oh, I'm surprised that he hasn't accomplished anything. I think he has accomplished a lot.
I guess I'm talking about the expectations, because he said at speeds never seen before in this country. That's why.
Yeah, and I don't know that I would say he isn't moving quickly. I think that he's moving deliberately, and he's moving on things that he knows that'll deliver real action in the next year, and like actually move progress forward, right? I think the major projects is a great example of that. Those are things that he actually wanted to deliver on, that he wants to see move the economy forward, and he did set that up properly. I think Build Canada Homes is still to be determined, like how does that actually function? But again, you're seeing him prioritize housing as a function of government, put the money into an agency to develop those houses, and then hopefully we see those being developed in the next year. When it comes to affordability, obviously he's already delivered a tax cut. That was one of his first things that he did right out of the gate. So there are things that have been improved for Canadians, and we'll just see how the next year goes. I do agree with Larissa. I think like the stages of legislative processes don't matter, but I think it will matter to Canadians whether or not they do see pocketbook changes in the next 12 months.
Yeah, Carl, on that, and also if you feel free to jump in on Don Davies saying that his party was very relevant in this legislative
Well, I mean,
period.
you got to take some credit for some of the things, but the truth, with all due respect, is that Mark Carney stole way more from the Conservative platform than from the NDP platform in this cycle. I think we have the most Conservative government since Stephen Harper, for sure. And that's one of the reasons why Pierre Poilievre is in trouble in losing MPs, because these MPs are quite comfortable to go with Mark Carney because he's delivering some of the agenda, the carbon tax cut, a few other things, right? And so that's the direction he's headed. But the truth is that the people at home, if they don't see a change in how their economic perspectives are, the cost of living, the housing crisis, if those things are not addressed soon, if Pierre Poilievre wins his leadership bid and you have a new NDP leader in place in March, the tide can shift quickly. Canadians will lose patience, especially if there's no deal with the Americans, which is what he was elected to do.
Yeah.
And so far, we have seen no progress on that front.
Larissa, talk a little bit about that opening that Poilievre might have if he survives that leadership review. And to Carl's point, if things don't get done, I mean, that almost seems like being served up on a silver platter for Poilievre.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things that there's only so many things each politician can control, right? Poilievre is going to be okay through his leadership review. We know he's going to be okay through his leadership review, but he can't control, for example, something that's going to impact him. Is going to be who is elected as leader of the NDP, right? And that's gonna siphon off votes on the left that I think Mark Carney's sort of taking for granted right now. And he's got such high numbers on preferred prime minister. There is nobody on his left flank to draw that number down, and so things like that are things that Pierre Poilievre isn't going to be able to control, or Carney's not going to be able to control. But Mark Carney is going to have to, really focus on delivering, getting those shovels in the ground, getting those deals done, getting that ambassador in place, and fixing those relationships that deteriorated over the Trudeau government. I heard Sabrina say earlier that this is the Mark Carney government. It is not the Trudeau government, and he's governing in a way that it's a brand new government, but it's not. Right? The caucus is very much the same. A lot of the hangover positions are very much the same. And I actually think when the NDP chooses a leader and starts to rebuild itself, Mark Carney is going to have to shore up his left flank a little bit. And all those conservatives that feel, so at home in a Mark Carney government might not feel so at home in a Mark Carney government anymore when he has to actually pay attention to what's happening on his left.
Sabrina, what do you think about that threat from the left?
I think that is to be seen, because I don't think that that's where Canadians are right now. And I think when you look at some of the issues that we likely would lose on the left, like, for example, climate change, I think obviously this is a government that's departed from the previous era of climate policy. That's not coming up as one of the key issues that Canadians care about right now. I think the key things that he is going to have to deliver on is affordability. But what does that actually mean? I think one of the things that this government is doing remarkably better than the Trudeau government did was communications and actually telling Canadians what they're doing. But if they can't deliberately show changes in affordability, that's where I think that there's a weakness. I think on the left, I'm just not sure that I see room for the NDP to take those votes back, because it's not what Canadians are talking about.
And Carl, they didn't get Stephen Guilbeault as their new leader.
No, and neither did the Green Party, because Stephen Guilbeault is so disgusted by the Liberal climate policy that he's remaining as a good Liberal. That's the kind of disgust I like to see.
Yeah, but that opening on the left, is that something that you think in the new year that Mark Carney will have to make sure that he shores up, or does it matter to him at this point?
Well, it will matter if people hurt him. Because the solutions that Mark Carney has proposed, if they're not delivered, and if they're not delivering the goods, people will look for something else. Right? And so it could be further to the right with Pierre Poilievre, or it could be further to the left. We'll see. You need to engage the conversation with Canadians, and right now, the Democrats are just talking about amongst themselves, really. They're not talking to Canadians. So once they made that choice, we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Larissa, lastly on the ambassador, you had mentioned it. How important is it? I mean, of course, there are reports that it's likely Mr. Wiseman, and, how important is it to have somebody there in place to try and turn that tide as quickly as possible and get something done, because of the pressure that Mark Carney is really self-imposed in saying that he would get a deal done quickly?
Yeah, it's hugely important. Everybody who is in politics as an elected person or as strategists, we're all in the business of relationships. And we know especially that relationship with Canada and the US, it's long, it's historic, it's very deep, and it transcends politics. It's families to families, businesses to businesses. And our ambassador is the ambassador for all of Canada. So it's very important on who this is. I think largely Mr. Weissman's is a good choice. His business credentials speak for themselves. I think the one sort of weakness he's got going for him is he's one of the authors of the Century Initiative. I encourage everybody to Google it. It encourages essentially massive immigration to Canada. And we've seen in Canada that has proven to be very difficult when we have a lack of resources for immigrants. We have a lack of healthcare, a lack of housing. We don't have enough social services. And in the States especially, it's a very polarizing topic, especially in the Trump administration. So that's the one piece about Mr. Weissman that I'm like, oh, maybe not. But by and large, I think he'd be a very capable, very competent ambassador that will represent the more business interests and the business side of Mark Carney. And I think it is in everybody's interest, Conservatives, New Democrats, and Liberals, and Bloc, for him to be successful. And I wish him the best if he is the new candidate.
Okay, I can feel Carl wants to get in here, but I have to be the Grinch here because we are all out of time.
I just wanted to nominate Michael Ma for ambassador.
Yeah,
Yes, me too.
And here we are. Okay, Larissa Waller, Carl Blanchet, and Sabrina Grover. Thank you all for being here for the Friday Front Bench. Today's takeaway is just ahead. Stay with us. And that is your Power Play week in politics. Thank you so much for spending your time with us. Vashti Capellos will be right back with you here on Power Play on Monday. Have yourselves a great weekend, and until then, stay tuned because your top headlines are just ahead.